Okay, repeat. Sorry. All right, so quiz due tonight on chapter 7 by midnight. Midterm grades are due by, for me to enter by Wednesday. So I'm going to try to get them in tomorrow once I have your last quiz grade in. This Friday will be an exam on chapters 5 through 8. We're going to start chapter 8 today and finish on Friday. And we should get a good chunk of it done today. So hopefully on Friday when we finish chapter 8, we'll we'll have an opportunity to review for your second exam. Any questions? Okay. Let's see. How's Turi today? Turi.
I'm tired. I worked last night.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you work again? I forgot.
I work at Plattsburgh Rehab.
Oh, okay. That's good. Let's see who else I want to pick on. Dan, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. All right. Um, let me. I'll take attendance after the lecture. I know you're all like, "Come on," but we're gonna do that after because I'm already recording. All right, let me share my screen. All right, all right. So last week we covered physical and cognitive development during childhood, ages 2 to 6. And this week we're covering emotional and social development, which to me is equally as interesting, probably a little more interesting in some cases. So again, ages 2 to 6, we develop a confident self-image, more effective emotion control, new social skills, morality, and a clear sense of gender identity. So recall that Eric Erickson came up with these 8 stages of psychosocial slash emotional development, and let Leah in. And the first one was, I don't know, trust versus mistrust, and then it was, I don't even know, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Now we're into the initiative versus guilt, right? So during this stage, we develop a new sense of purposefulness. We're eager to try new tasks, join activities with peers. Uh, this allows us to try new things and to cooperate. And we have these strides in conscious development. But if we don't do these things, the opposite of that would be the result of an overly strict superego. So our conscience causes us too much guilt if we are not initiative. Um, and a lot of this is related to parental threats, criticism from our peers and others, and punishment. So, what about our culture has an influence? And it's interesting because a lot of the things that have an influence on us are passed down from generation to generation through stories, adages, proverbs, right? So, if you look at, for example, collectivistic culture, like Chinese culture, their stories reflect Chinese discipline and social obligations, which makes sense because they're again with the interdependence and so on. So they'll review the child's past misdeeds and teach proper behavior. Morning, Uten. But in contrast,
I'm on my phone. I don't really know how it works, but I can't see myself, so I have no idea what you're seeing.
I'm
Sorry.
I'm seeing you.
Okay.
That's fine. But with Irish American stories, they reflect American values of autonomy and self-esteem. Um, so they'll positively cast faults, and then what happens is, so what does that mean? It means that when children misbehave or whatever, they attribute it to spunk and assertiveness rather than do the right thing, like in think of your fellow person. So our self-concept consists largely of observable characteristics by the age of 3. For example, our appearance, our possessions, our behaviors, and typical emotions and attitudes. For example, like I like or I don't like by the age of 3.5. And by the age of 5, these self-reports coincide with maternal reports. So they start to line up with what our mothers will say about us when we're about age 5. They start to line up, but prior to that, not so much. We can increasingly anticipate future states and needs, and we don't at this stage yet. We don't at this point yet. We don't reference personality traits like I'm an introvert, or a child would say I'm shy. Self-esteem. These are self-judgments and associated feelings, and what influences these, our emotional experiences, our behaviors, and then long-term psychological adjustments. This will ultimately contribute to our initiative. When we're this age, we kind of overrate our abilities and we underestimate the difficulty of tasks. And this is supported by parent scaffolding, that's Lev Vygotsky again, and praise of effort. So yeah, kids think that they can do things that they can't do. And parents are like, good try, you know, but you done messed up. Emotional competence. We see at this age range a development in emotional understanding, emotional self-regulation, an increase in self-conscious emotions like guilt and shame, an increase in empathy. And these are vital for successful peer relationships and overall our mental health. So preschoolers can correctly judge the causes of emotions, the consequences of emotions, and what emotions look like. And parents will help by discussing the child's emotional experiences and validating their feelings. Like, I see you're upset because, you know, Johnny won't share, or, you know, and Johnny's acting up because of whatever, and you're feeling certain ways. Emotional self-regulation. By the ages 3 to 4, they can verbalize strategies for alleviating negative emotion. Of course, this is going to be aided by our language development, our understanding of emotions, their causes and the consequences, gains in executive function, so problem solving, working memory. We'll watch parents express and manage their emotions, and the adult-child conversations that prepare child for difficult situations. So parents will talk to their kids about what could happen during the day, and based on things that happened the day prior or the weeks prior, or what they've heard from other parents talking to their children or hearing stories about their children. Self-conscious emotions, shame, embarrassment, guilt, pride. We become increasingly sensitive to praise and blame ourselves, or blame. We become increasingly sensitive to praise and blame as our self-concept develops. Intense shame is linked to maladjustment. And appropriate moderate guilt supports good adjustment. So it's good to feel guilty about some things. Supportive parents focus on improving performance, and these vary across culture. So the difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy is when you are feeling it like they are feeling it. So you're feeling the same or similar emotions as another person. And that will ultimately motivate our pro-social or altruistic behaviors, helping behaviors. For some children, it prompts self-focused distress. And then the difference between empathy and sympathy is you just feel concern with sympathy or sorrow for someone else. Empathy, you're kind of going through it with them. You are feeling what they are feeling, not just feeling bad for them. So what leads to some differences in empathy? Factors that encourage pro-social behavior like temperament, our what we're born with, our sociability, our assertiveness, our social and emotional self-regulation, and even parenting, right? So parents who are warm and sensitive respond with empathy and sympathy. They teach kindness. They'll intervene when the child displays inappropriate emotion, like throwing a fit because they didn't get what they want. Any questions? Okay, our peer relations. These provide learning experiences for us through our conversations, through our cooperations with them, play. And then I would like you to know the different kinds of play. The non-social activity is they're just watching others play. Then there's parallel play, where they will play near others with similar materials, like maybe they're drawing or maybe they're building with blocks, but they don't interact with them. Then there's associative play, where they're engaging in separate activities, but they'll exchange toys and they'll interact. And then there's cooperative play when they are like engaged in the same thing, like they're both working out some sort of play, some sort of dramatic make believe story. So the play categories. So the first 2 years we are engaging in functional play, and this is just simple repetitive motor movements with or without objects. It could be just us moving around. Constructive play between 3 and 6 years, where we want to create or construct something. And then there's an overlap between constructive play and make-believe play, so it happens simultaneously. Make-believe play is where you're acting out everyday and imaginary roles. Ooh, and your boys are what, 5, you said?
Yeah, they're 5.
Shh, quiet.
Well, we're getting ready for school. They're riding their scooters all around the house. It's crazy.
So follow-up research on peer sociability. Non-social activities that can ostracize peers, like hovering, aimless wandering, and repetitive motor actions. Signs of poor temperament and emotional regulation. Sociodramatic play helps children understand feelings, others' feelings, and regulate their own feelings. They help children negotiate roles and rules and compromise. Then we have these gender differences, right? So these gender differences in our cooperative play styles. Girls like sociodramatic play and boys like rough and tumble play. Both promote emotional understanding and self-regulation. What do you think contributes to our play type differences between genders?
Probably like what was like roles back in like how we evolved to have certain roles, like the hunter-gatherer type things.
That's very good, Alicia.
Oh, thank you.
That's very much true. Very good.
Mm.
So cultural variations in play. So going back to what Alicia said, when we have something that our ancestors benefited from, it kind of ensures that they'll pass these skills or abilities or stereotypes or stereotypic ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. If it's something that our ancestors benefited from in order to survive, then they'll pass those preferences on. And there are ways that these are passed on, and we're going to discuss that as soon as we get to gender differences and gender typing, which means gender development. But it's all rooted in survival of our ancestors. There are also cultural, which is you're going to see here, cultural influences and social influences. So collectivistic cultures, they stress group harmony and they discourage self-assertion. There are varying beliefs about the importance of play. If you look at village cultures, the play type is interpretive of daily life and the scripts are limited. But if you look at industrialized, developed urban context, they're more inventive and imaginative because they can afford to be. Early childhood friendships. Basically, someone who likes you plays with you and shares toys. Our friendships change frequently. The concept of friendship is not long term. What are the benefits of friendships? They can reinforce our behaviors, our feelings that make us feel good. We learn about cooperation. We learn about how to express our emotions. And what research has shown is that those who have friends do better in school. The parental influences on our peer relations. There are direct ones, like they can have play dates. They can show how to initiate contacts. They can guide on how to act toward others. And then there are the indirect influences, like simply by having a secure attachment with our caregivers, that gives us a sense of trust and confidence in our abilities to seek affiliation with others. Um, uh, Being emotionally expressive and sensitive with our communication. That again, it's between the parent and the child, but that child then learns from those experiences and kind of exhibits them with their friendships and even just parent-child play, learning appropriate behaviors. Now on to morality and aggression. Any questions? Comments? Okay. So the foundations of morality and aggression. By the end of early childhood, they can state many moral rules, like don't steal, don't hit, whatever. They'll argue over matters of justice and fairness. Our conscience begins to take shape. The external adult influences become our internal standards, and we'll develop compassionate concerns and principles of good conduct. So, what are the different approaches or perspectives on moral development? What are the different ways of explaining how our morality develops? There's the psychoanalytic, the social learning perspective, and then the cognitive development. Right. So the psychoanalytic comes from Freud because he came up with psychodynamic theory or psychoanalysis, same thing. Whereas there's an interaction between our superego and guilt as a result, and then also induction and empathy-based guilt. These are all in the following slides. Social learning, where we're seeing moral behavior modeled, and then we're being punished for behaving immorally. And then the cognitive developmental perspective, that children, cognitive thinking, children are active thinkers about social rules. So looking at the psychoanalytic perspective, induction, right? Induction, the whole idea behind induction is that you're getting on the level of the child. You're like, come on, you're trying to appeal to their good senses, if you will, right? So induction promotes conscience formation, where the adult will point out effects of misbehavior. You don't want to do that, because now you wouldn't want to be poked in the eye. You wouldn't want to have your hair pulled because it hurts. And why would you want someone else to hurt, right? So this encourages empathy-based guilt, and it gives the child reasons for changing their behaviors. Child characteristics such as temperament also will have an impact on the success of parents' techniques or ability to induce the children to essentially feel for the other person. And again, if we can establish some sort of morality that will result in guilt for misbehaviors, then it will change their behaviors. The social learning theory, again, modeling, effective models of moral behavior show warmth and responsiveness, competence and power, and consistency between our words and our behavior. So it's one thing to say to tell our kids, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, and so on. But if they witness us not adhering to that, it's out the window. And these effects are most influential in the early years of our children's development. Punishment in early childhood, discipline heavy in threats and punishment doesn't produce lasting changes in behavior, because they're not internalizing it. They're just not doing things. So if they're trying to, if a parent punishes severely a child for misbehaving, then the child's no longer going to engage in that behavior, but for all the wrong reasons. It's to avoid punishment, not because they believe the behavior is wrong. That's why mild punishment works best. If you punish anything harshly, then what happens is the behavior does extinguish, but it's temporary. It's not long lasting because they don't internalize it. Also, harsh punishment can cause many side effects like fear, or you're modeling what it is, right? You heard this before, hitting kids only teaches kids to hit their kids. And it's true. It's true. So the alternatives to harsh punishment, timeout, taking away their toys, their games. So effective mild punishment involves consistency. Meaning, if you're going to give a kid a timeout for, I don't know, hitting their sibling, you have to do it every time. Because otherwise, like they say, the absence of punishment is the mildest form of reinforcement. There has to be a warm parent-child relationship, and there has to be explanations, not just you did what I told you not to do, boom, you're done, right? You're no more toys or whatever. It has to be an explanation of why you shouldn't have done what I told you not to do. I kept this in here because I thought it was interesting. What they're showing you is compared to 1975, 1985, 1995, and 2002, the number of parents per 1,000 asked that reported slapping or spanking their children from the ages of 3 to 11. And you can see that at all years that this was measured, it drops, right? It does drop. But what you'll notice, though, is that during the 80s was the highest at the age of 3. Parents were spanking or slapping their children more, essentially, than at any other generation. And if you look at 2002, it's significantly lower. Then I don't know. I think maybe what happens here. What do you think happens? So everybody is all about, there's this big movement against corporal punishment, hitting your children, and child abuse and things like that. What do you think could cause this incredible increase between 4 and 5?
The child's probably developing their own sense of identity, and they're probably like learning to interact with the parents, and they're probably learning to like stand up for themselves, or maybe they're learning to express their emotions, and
They're like independence.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
how come it didn't happen here? Aren't the other kids independent here also?
But they're finally like cognizant, I think, of that they can probably negotiate things with their parents. Like if they act out, maybe their parents will let them have what they want.
Okay. So what this is showing us is that in 2002, when they asked parents who had 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 11, have you ever spanked or slapped your child? And those that had 3-year-olds had the least amount than any other of the years. But those who had 5-year-olds were like, yes. What does that mean?
Are they getting more comfortable?
Who?
They're inconsistent from experience.
Like they're getting more like you think of like when you have a small child, like you don't want to like, but you're more gentle with them.
What in 2002? What in 2002 led to the highest rate of 5-year-olds being spanked or slapped than since 1975? Higher than 1975.
Well, it was right after 9/11, so maybe there was a lot of stress.
Okay, so I like the socio-historical thing. That's kind of what we're going with here.
Maybe the change in technology and children are becoming more influenced by things, and maybe those things weren't necessarily good.
Mm-hmm. When
That's all I got.
no, you have great ideas. Is that Alicia again, or is that
Yeah,
okay? You have great ideas.
thank you.
I especially like the 9/11 thing. That was really good. But that would be the year after. But still, okay. Um, when I when I first started having children, my 2-year-old was acting up. It was my firstborn. My father said, "You need to spank him," and I'm like, I don't believe in spanking. And I said, I'm not gonna hit my kids, right? He says, and he was like dead serious, and he's like, you don't do it all the time. You only need to do it once. If you do it once, they'll remember. He said, but you got to wait for the right thing and the right time, so they do remember. And I'll tell you what, that was like some really, really wise stuff because I don't remember ever my father hitting me, ever, ever. But he swears that he spanked us. He swears that he did. I don't remember him hitting any of us, spanking, slapping, none of it. I remember hearing stories of me being very difficult, and I never, the story never ended with him spanking me. But I always, but my brothers, and there are 5 boys and a girl in that order. We did what he told us to do because we were still like afraid of him. So that means that he must have spanked us at the right time once for us to learn not to mess with the old man. But we don't remember being spanked. We just have this associative fear of repercussions. Am I making sense?
Yes, yeah, you make
Okay.
perfect sense.
Okay. So if you look here, and by the way, this is when my father said that the spanking should happen. The spank at 3, because then they won't remember it when they're older. We don't remember things when we're 3, but we will associate things. We'll have an emotional memory. We'll have an emotional an associative memory of the individual and some sort of like fear. If you look here in 2002, nobody was spanking their kids. I shouldn't say that. Forgive me. It was the lowest number of people corporal, doing whatever with their children, just not punishing them physically. And then it seems like this generation all of a sudden realized, wait a minute. I got a spoiled kid. Is this making sense?
Could
It
you just
makes sense.
Now these are
And I
not.
think it's funny to listen to because then I'm like, wow, I did this stuff with my children. Now I want to have another kid and try this out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of influences on whether people will spank or slap their kids. Like, for example, I've never slapped my oldest. I've never spanked my oldest. Never. My second oldest, I spanked once, and she was 3, and it's because she scratched her brother's back in the tub so bad that like he was bleeding. He had like these claw marks down his back. Um, the third oldest, I spanked once because he ran into the road. The fourth, Jerry, I've spanked probably more than once. Probably like if I had to throw a number out there, I would say like 3, 4, or 5. Like she was, and then the youngest, I probably spanked. I don't even know if I've ever spanked her. I'm gonna say I have at least once, but I don't think I have. Jerry got the brunt of it. The fourth one, she was again. There's this who needs what, when, and how often kind of thing. Um, and I'm not for spanking, by the way, at all. It wasn't like this was. It was like I said, like my daughter needed to understand that hurts. like you hurt him bad. And he was her kid brother. He was, I think, like 2 or something, 2.5, and she was like 4 or 3.5, something kind of like that. And she clawed the heck out of him because she just was not understanding. That's pain. Anyway, so I find this graph interesting. I find this graph very interesting. That there's not a significant difference in the number of those who say that they have spanked or slapped their children. I mean, at points there are. If we take, point to point, there are significant differences, but there's still a trend overall that we drop. But I find this is what we call an interaction, when one is crossing the other one while the others are going in the same direction. Any questions?
I think it makes sense because like around 2002, I was like maybe 4 or 5, and my dad, he's like Hispanic, and like Hispanics are very like um
Rigid?
offer punishment, and then like now when I lived with him, because I didn't live with him for a bit, and then now when I lived with him, I was like 19 or 20, and when I like did something, there was that fear like, oh, is he gonna hit me? But like, of course he's not, because I'm an adult now.
Right.
But there's always like every time I did something, I was like, oh no, is he gonna get the belt out? But like, no, he's not gonna do that.
The belt. Oof, that's, yeah.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
saying. There's a saying. I think it's like, and I don't know if this is accurate. I don't know if this is perfectly correct. And it was something like, spare the rod, spoil the child. And basically what that means is that if you don't, punish your kids with physical punishment, then they're going to be spoiled. Now that's a very old saying. Things have changed a lot, but ultimately you don't need to spank your kids. You don't need to slap your kids, but because there are other ways. But okay, positive parenting. Again, this is the foundations of morality and aggression. Use a child's misbehaviors or transgressions as teaching opportunities. Right? Reduce opportunities for misbehavior. Don't, like, for example, if you don't want your kids coloring on the walls when they're 3 years old, don't leave a bunch of markers out, right? Because they're going to. Explain why we have rules. Encourage them to participate in family duties and routines. Then they'll get a better understanding, right? Why we have rules. Try compromising and problem solving. And again, with all things related to behaviors, it's not just about punishing. And I'm not saying physical punishment. Punishing could be, again, taking away their toys, giving them a timeout, whatever, because there needs to be that. Just can't be harsh. But with all things related to modifying behavior, there has to be an emphasis, there has to be reinforcement for the behaviors you want to see. So ethnic differences in the consequences of physical punishment. This might speak to Arriaga. Children, dependent on the culture, view it as having interest in mind when the form of discipline is culturally approved. So Arriaga said something to the effect of, my father is whatever. I'm not going to say background. Right? So as a result, it is culturally accepted for such and such behavior. So the mild, so again, children will view punishment having their interests in mind when the punishment is mild and delivered in the context of parental warmth, and it's accompanied by verbal teaching. Not just I told you not to, or I told you to. It is, if you don't do the things that I tell you. Like I remember when I spanked. I remember when I spanked my third oldest, my son, because he ran across the road to get a ball that the wind blew, and I spanked him. Not hard. Didn't even not pull his pants down, nothing like that. Just spanked him on his, I think I don't know if he even had a pull up or a diaper. I don't even know. No, he couldn't have had a diaper, but it was on his pants or whatever, on his butt. And I said, look, if you do that, you will die. Like you will go somewhere, we'll never see you again. Like you cannot do that to you or to us. And he never crossed the road again. So there has to be some sort of explanation as to why this is happening. Sam, you have something to say?
What? No, I just unmute. My kids are out of the car now, so I unmuted it.
Okay. So we see that it's linked to a rise in behavior problems when the parents consider it wrong, when they resort to it when they're angry, agitated, or rejecting of the child. So they always say, don't punish your kids when you're angry. Yeah, I don't know. Like that's tough. I mean, I understand that. The reason why is because typically the form of punishment is more severe when you are emotional about the circumstance. Because in reality, see, I wouldn't go back. I don't think I would change anything for the Alex or James spanking, but I might have gone back for Jerry. I don't know. I don't remember why I even spanked Jerry. I don't even know. Like I said, I don't even know how many times I did. I just know it was more than once. I can feel it. I can just feel it in my bones that like I spanked her more than once. I just can't remember what they were for. And now she's a great kid. But anyway, that's not to say that it's whatever. Um, so they say, don't spank when you're angry, don't or punish when you're angry of any kind, because it's more severe and you're not thinking to explain or whatever. To give yourself some time to think about it first. The thing is, though, and here's why that's difficult to adhere to, is because if we take time out, then we may not make the punishment as severe, but we also might make it too mild, thus having less of an impact. Also, the further in time we get from the actual incident that you want to punish, there's a less likelihood of the punishment or the teaching moment being associated with the behavior. It's like you, and I'm not comparing humans to dogs, but if a dog craps on the carpet or anywhere in the house, and if you punish it right away, no, that's bad, and scold the dog, no, right? And then you clean up or whatever. The dog associates that scolding with something that just happened, right? But if you go to work and you come home and the dog crapped in the house, and you're yelling at the dog, and the dog's on the couch, and the dog's like, "What are you yelling at me for?" The dog has no idea. There's no association between the action they committed and the punishment.
It's like it's almost like they forget about it. Like my kids have like broken each other's glasses, and I tell my husband, and he gets home and he's like, "Oh, did you do this today?" I'm like, "You can't do that because they already forgot that they did it."
Right, right.
So yeah, I feel that.
Mm-hmm. So the cognitive developmental perspective, that moral judgments are based on concepts of justice, that preschoolers can discern between moral imperatives, social conventions, and matters of personal choice. Parents help advance child's moral thinking by telling stories with moral implications, pointing out injustices, and encouraging pro-social behavior. Sam, how do I ask?
Yeah.
Have you ever, can you think of a time where you were watching something with the kids, and you may have been in public, it may have been on TV, it may have been in something where you pointed out something that was wrong to your kids and go, "See, that's why we don't do that."
Yeah, like
Yeah.
there's like if a TV show says, I notice a lot of kids TV shows say stuff like idiot in them, and my
Yes.
kids will laugh, and I'll say, "Oh, that's not nice to say to
Very
people."
good.
So now when they watch it, I'll hear them say to each other, "Oh, that's not nice."
Yes. Good job. That's right. That's very
Yeah.
good. I had I my daughter had a friend over 7-year-old daughter. No, 9. And they had a play date yesterday, and it was outside, right? So there's distancing and all that. But anyway, so the 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 friend of hers kept saying, "Oh my God, oh my God,"
Oh,
and so in this house, in our house, we make a point out of saying, "Oh my gosh," um, because "oh my God" can be offensive to some people, and we're not being overly whatever, we're not, um, but not everyone believes in God. Not everybody has a God, or has one God. They can say gods. So just to keep it on the level. So, but my daughter didn't say anything. She didn't say, but the friend just kept saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." I thought that was very interesting because you get to witness when they're around their friends how different their upbringings are.
yes.
Yeah. So aggression, types of aggression, there are two kinds. One is instrumental, right? You're using aggression as an instrument to get something, to fulfill a need or desire, right? And this is self-initiated. The other one is hostile, where the goal is not to get something, but it's to hurt something, right? You're meaning to hurt someone, and this could be defensively motivated, or you are the provoker, you are the instigator, that you want to hurt someone. Physical aggression can be direct or indirect. You can cause physical harm, like hurt someone physically, or you could hurt things they own. That's physical, like damage it. Verbal aggression is always direct because you are aggressing, you're verbally aggressing them. This could be in the form of threats of physical aggression, name calling, teasing. And then there's relational aggression. This could be direct, like you are picking on your friend, you're picking on your whatever, your sibling, you're picking on your whatever, something that's relational to dominate, to hurt, right, in a relationship. And this can be direct or indirect, right? So it could be direct as in you are socially excluding them from your clique. It could be indirect as that you are gossiping, you're backbiting, or it could be um, uh, direct or indirect, depending on how you go about it, by manipulating the friendship itself. Sources that influence aggression. Of course, there are individual differences, even our gender, based on, and this goes back to what Alicia was saying with the evolutionary influence. So when there's something evolutionary, it means that it's biological, which means that it's been passed down genetically, that the genes that are coding for protein synthesis are going to be are going to be building some sort of structure, or so an anatomical thing or some sort of physiological thing within our bodies that ensures that there are differences. So those differences are going to be in hormones. Or I was going to say they're going to be regulated by our hormones, what we're exposed to in the womb, the level of androgens. And then, of course, there's going to be the gender role conformity. I mean, this is going to be a social influence, a cultural influence, that this is how boys are, this is how girls are. Other influences of aggression are family. If we have harsh, inconsistent discipline, if there are repetitive cycles of such discipline, right? So, um, 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 that the aggressor wins and the other one gives in, I guess, call it that way. If the family atmosphere has a lot of conflict in it, if everyone's fighting, if mom and dad are fighting constantly, and the siblings are fighting constantly, and maybe the grandma or the grandpa that lives with them is fighting, everybody's fighting, and then media, right? We know from studies that media will increase hostile thoughts and emotions, and these aggressive behaviors can last into adulthood. Young children are especially likely to imitate TV violence. Violent video and computer games have similar effects. So when they looked at males and females and compared the, let's see, it says the mean number of aggressive acts in adolescence and early adulthood. So we're talking about from puberty into early adulthood. So say 20. So we're going to go from like 12-ish average to 20. If when they measured the number of hours they spent watching TV when they were children and early adolescents, they found that there was significantly less aggressive acts if they watched significantly less TV. So, meaning, if you have an 18-year-old young man who does something or doesn't do something, doesn't matter, and you ask him, how much TV did you watch when you were a child? And if they said, not a lot, then in the first bar here in the red, they committed the least amount of aggressive acts as young adults, okay, for males. But if it was 1 to 3, significantly more. More than 3, even more. And the same effect for girls and females, same effect, but it doesn't increase. It's not a straight line. It's like once they reach a certain amount, it kind of just plateaus. Why do you suppose that is?
Because women are natural caregivers and we have more compassion for people. As
Okay.
like from like a motherly standpoint, like we
Yeah.
want to nurture others as opposed to hurt them.
Okay. Take that and have the same meaning in a reverse way. So there are two ways to look at behaviors. There's kindness, and then there's not kindness. So you're saying, well, because women are more kind. What's another way of saying the same thing? So let's say kindness and meanness.
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry.
You answered the question correctly. I just want you to phrase it differently.
So women are more likely to watch things that have more compassion in them.
Ooh, that's good.
Like we're not
That's good.
prone to want to watch things that are full of violence and stuff.
That's what I wanted you to say. That's what I wanted you to say. Not so much that women are kinder. They're just not as aggressive as males.
Yeah, we naturally don't
Yes.
have territories to protect.
Well, neither do males anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, like from back in the day.
Right. Yep. Right. So it's saying the same thing, but like it's meaning the same thing, but it's saying it differently because I think it has somewhat of an additive meaning. It adds more to the picture to say that not necessarily that women are more nurturing, which they are, but just that they're less aggressive, because that's what we're looking at, right? We're not looking
Yeah.
at nurturing behavior. We're looking at aggressive behavior.
Yeah.
Right. But your insight into, well, we can easily say that, well, obviously females are less aggressive than males at all ages, which is true. But it's not just because they're more nurturing, they're just less aggressive. Because not all women are nurturing either.
No, that is true.
It is very much true. Okay, last slide of the day. Helping children control aggression. Treatment is best begun early. We can promote effective ways of relating to others by having them take the perspective of another, right? Engage in conflict resolution. having parent-family supports, such as training and positive parenting techniques. We could relieve some of the family stressors. Also, social supports for families are very important. Having strong ties to extended family members or center-based care. I'm going to stop recording.